You are listening to the Bethel Atlanta Sermon of the Week. We hope you enjoy this message. For more information about Bethel Atlanta, visit www.bethelatlanta.com.
Yeah. Oh. Hey. Oh. Love you guys. Okay, that's great. Y'all are awesome. Wow. Well, I'm excited to be here. I love talking with you guys. I love worshiping with you guys even more than talking. It's awesome. It's really special worshiping together. Well, like Dan said, I'm going to talk about perseverance again, which that makes sense. It's the nature of perseverance that it's coming up again. And, the Lord hasn't changed the subject, so I'm not changing the subject. And I just feel this invitation from him to walk out this message right now and walk it out well. And I feel, I have the pleasure of knowing y'all and hearing your stories, and I don't think mine's uncommon to so many of y'all's. And so I feel the Lord saying, hey, here's tools. Here's some keys to this season. Here's some keys to walking this out well and letting him form something beautiful in you. So perseverance, it's bearing up under difficulty while depending on the Lord's strength. So there's an invitation that we are made strong by depending on his strength. In our weakness, we can be strong by depending on him. And perseverance, I feel like there's a critical component, and that component is hope. And I've just been studying hope, and there's just a few different words in the Greek and Hebrew, and one in the Bible is kavah. And kav is a cord, and kavah is to hold a cord under tension, like a waiting expectantly, a hopeful waiting. So there's like a tension until release. Does anybody feel that when you're in hope? You're like, okay, is it going to happen? Like that, do y'all get that feeling of the tension until, when is it going to happen? When's the release of that rubber band, So in Psalms 130, verse 5 to 7, it says, I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and I wait for his word. My soul waits in hope for the Lord, more than the watchman for the morning. Yes, more than the watchman for the morning. Israel, wait for the Lord. For with the Lord there's mercy, and with him is abundant redemption. Okay, this waiting, I wait for the Lord. It's kavah, it's a twist, a stretch, the tension of enduring. Does anybody feel a tension in their enduring? Does anybody feel a tension in their waiting? It's building a hope in us. And I can't forget what he's forming in the fire, what he's forging in the waiting, what he's forging while we wait with expectation, with our hope, our kavah. And it's his past faithfulness that is what we get to depend on as we wait. It's his character that motivates our hope. And so I shared a verse 2 weeks ago, Romans 5:3, and it's just too good not to repeat. Not only that, but we celebrate in our sufferings, knowing that our tribulations bring about perseverance, perseverance proven character, and proven character hope, and that hope does not disappoint. Because the love of God has been given and poured out within our hearts through the Holy Spirit who he has given to us. So this hope under tension, it does not disappoint. So I gotta maintain that in the journey. And that's a stewarding. Like I gotta steward this hope. So I'm gonna share the story of the Shunammite woman today. I love this woman. I love her. Okay, 2 Kings 4, if you'll turn there. It's funny, Elisha's been popping up in a lot of our stories and our sermons. We've talked about the oil. We talked about, Michael Maiden talked about Naaman and Elisha. And so Elisha, this is the story of Elisha and the Shunammite. Okay, so I'm gonna tell it a little bit, and I'll read a little bits here and there. But the story begins, and Elisha keeps coming through town. He comes through town over and over, and the Shunammite starts making him meals every time he comes through town. And then she tells her husband, hey, we need to build another room, a room on a roof for this man of God. We need to take care of him. So she and her husband, they build this room onto their home. So she's a prominent woman in town, builds a room on her home, and she's like, Elisha, man of God, you stay here every time you pass through. And so eventually he's like, what do you want? Can I do something for you, Shunammite lady? And she's like, oh no, I don't need anything. And he says, can I say something to the king on your behalf? And she says, no, I live among my own people. He says, can I say something to the commander of the armies? She says, I live among my own people. And then, so Elisha's like, what can be done for her? And then his servant, Gehazi, he answers, and he says, it's a fact that she has no son, and her husband's old. And so Elisha says, call her here. And so the Shunammite's standing in the doorway, and Elisha says, at this season next year, you are going to embrace a son. So this is verse 16. She says, no, my Lord, you man of God, do not lie to your servant. This woman has absolutely no hope for this child that she desperately wants. She doesn't even want to ask the man of God as he persistently says, what do you want? Nothing, I'm fine. I live among my own people. She was past the point of hoping. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but longing fulfilled is a tree of life. She was orchestrating her world to be small enough to not have pain. Have y'all ever felt that in life? I have totally felt that in life. Y'all, one day, I am not a cat person, but we have a cat. This is an easy example. And my cat got in a cat fight, and it was terrible. I will not go into the gruesome details, but it was so bad. And I remember saying, why do I even have this stupid cat? Because my heart is broken. My children's hearts are broken. We had to get her stitched up, and it was a hot mess. And she's wonderful, actually. I love her now. But it's been a lot of years. But I remember thinking, I just don't want more things to love, because this hurts. As you know, my heart's walking around and this cat that's exploring the neighborhood and getting in cat fights, and it's terrible. And I think this is a minor example of this sweet Shunammite lady who was like, she's like, I don't even want to hope for that son. Why? Don't even mess with my heart, Elisha. Don't lie to me. Oh, it's just like the cat. I know it's so much bigger, y'all, okay? But I'm just sharing an easy story from my personal life. But you know, there's a heart posture sometimes that I want to orchestrate my life smaller. Like, if I didn't love all these people, my heart wouldn't be broken when their heart's breaking. If I didn't step out and risk, I wouldn't feel the pain of falling flat on my face sometimes. If I kept my life smaller, it'd be easier to manage. If I don't put my heart out there, it's not going to have the potential to get broken. And so this woman, she's like, no, my Lord, you man of God, don't you lie to me. So she's not carrying an ounce of hope. God doesn't need that ounce of hope. Her son is in her arms 1 year later, like the prophet says. Can we dream as those who've never been disappointed? Can we carry hope in our disappointment? It's a muscle we have to work because it is not our natural impulse. Our natural impulse is to shrink our life, make it manageable, keep it contained. I can control this much, and this works for me. And this woman, she put her heart out there when Elisha made a promise, and a year later, she's holding that baby. So fast forward a handful of years, and the boy, it says, is grown, and he's a child now. And the child was grown, and the day came that he went out to his father and the reapers. And he says, my head, my head. And the father says to the servant, carry this son to his mother. And so the mother is sitting there with her son on her lap, and the son dies. And she says to her husband, please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys so that I may run to the man of God and return. And her husband says, why are you going to him today? It's not the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, it'll be fine. This woman, she had not an ounce of hope a handful of years earlier. And look at what is God forming in her? She's about to be tenacious. She says to the servant, drive the donkey and go on. Do not slow down the pace for me unless I tell you. So she went to the man of God on Mount Carmel. Tenacity overtook this woman. Hope overtook her. A hope that she had not an ounce of. It overtook her. God is forming something in her over the course of her life. You see it. No hope to this tenacity, like, I'm going to get to that man of God right now. I'm going to get a miracle. And she's persevering. And in our perseverance, we can be tired. And I think fatigue is one of the biggest ploys of the enemy. We cannot grow weary. And Pastor Bill, he says, fatigue occurs when you overextend in the right things. You can get jaded and a resistant heart. And it happens when activity replaces relationship. And it gives birth to unbelief. We cannot grow weary in just doing the good things. If we replace relationship with anything else, we will be fatigued. And we will be moving in the direction of unbelief. So how am I stewarding not becoming fatigued? Because I don't know that we can persevere well when we're tired. I can't persevere well when I'm tired. I can literally feel my mind going off in the wrong direction. Do you know how that feels? When you're like, how did I get here? How did I, sell everything and, like how did I had a moment a few weeks ago that I'm like, well, we'll just, sell it all and, go live in the basement. I was already moving in your basement. And my mind just like wandered down the road of like, I guess this is our future. Like, just, woe is me. We have to maintain a renewed mind to not let it wander into fatigue to where we are not believing the promises of the Lord. We have to renew our mind continuously so that we stand on the belief of who he is, what he said, and knowing that it is true. This woman, if she wasn't convinced that this boy's going to live, she would have stayed home because it wasn't a new moon with her dead son. She would have been fatigued and like, oh, I give up. I didn't ask for him anyway. Like, she says it later. She wasn't fatigued. She was renewing her mind, I believe. you have to be rested to stay in the fight. In tenacity, it requires a belief system that knows the will of God. If I don't know his will, I'm not going to fight for it. So this woman, she was persistent. She was persevering. She was like, I'm not leaving the man of God. So Elisha sees her in the distance, sends the servant Gehazi. Hey, behold, that person there is the Shunammite. Please run now and meet her and say to her, is it going well for you? Is it going well for your husband? Is it going well for the child? Then she answered, it's going well. She's not even giving him the time of day. But she came to the man of God at the hill and took hold of his feet. And Gehazi came to push her away, and the man of God said, leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and the Lord has concealed it from me and has not informed me. Then she said, did I ask for a son, my Lord? Did I not say, don't give me false hope? Whew. Wow. She is persevering, and the Lord is forming something in her. She is a different woman than 10 years ago. Did I not say, don't give me false hope? So Elisha says to Gehazi, go take my staff in your hand, don't stop, and lay it on the boy's face. And then the mother says, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you, Elisha. She's not stopping. She's not going anywhere. She reminds me of Esther, who's going before that king. Like, okay, I'm gonna go before the king. I'm gonna go before the king again. She reminds me of the nagging widow before the judge, the non-godly judge that's like, I'm gonna keep asking, I'm gonna keep asking, I'm gonna keep asking, and I'm gonna get my miracle. She is not leaving Elisha's side. She is persistent with tenacity. I love it. And so Elisha's like, well, I guess she's not leaving. I'm going with you. And he returned. So they follow. Gehazi's ahead. Elisha and the woman, the Shunammite, are walking behind. And when Gehazi goes, nothing happens, and the boy does not wake up. And so he comes back and he tells Elisha, the boy's not awakened yet. And so Elisha enters the house, and the boy was dead, laid on his bed. And so he entered, and he shut the door behind them, and he prayed to the Lord. He got up on the bed and laid on the child and put his mouth on the mouth and eyes on the eyes and his hands on his hands. And he bent down on him, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house back and forth once and went up and bent down on him, and the boy sneezed 7 times. And the boy opened his eyes, and he called Gehazi and said, call the Shunammite. So he called her, and when she came to him, he said, pick up your son. And then she came in and fell at his feet and bowed down to the ground and picked her son up and left. Wow. Man, her story's not done yet. She's just amazing. So the Lord's forming something in her. He's cultivated a hope that didn't exist, a tenacity that says, I'm not going until I get my answer. I'm not going to stop asking. I mean, that judge gave the widow, the nagging widow, what she wanted just to get rid of it, just to get rid of the questioning. How much better is our Father? How much better is our God who cares about our hearts, who's a good Father? And so I'm going to fast forward a few chapters. We're still in 2 Kings, and we're now in chapter 8. Okay, so he said, now Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life and said, hey, arise and go with your household and live wherever you can live, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will indeed come on the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and acted in accordance with his word. This woman's obedient. she's been persevering through life, and she's, okay, the man of God says move and go and pick up my stuff and my family and move from my home, and she's a well-to-do woman. She's established in the community, and she's obedient. So she moves, and then the famine comes. And so the famine wipes out the town, and then about 7 years later, the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to appeal to the king for her house and for her field. Okay, this woman didn't want to ask anything from the king back in the first time. I mean, she's like, I live among my people. I don't need anything. She had no desire to go before the king or even send Elisha to the king. And now she's like, I'm going to this king, and I want to get my land back. I want to get my home back. So there was something in her. She's grateful in the famine. She was fed in the famine. She survived in the famine. But now she knows she has to go back home. She can't settle in that valley. She can't settle in the field, in the waiting, in the persevering. Like, oh, there's something that's missing. I have to go get it. And she goes to the king. This is a wild story. So the king is with Gehazi. Gehazi is Elisha's servant, okay? And Gehazi is recounting to the king the miracles of Elisha. Okay, so Elisha's like, the king is saying, hey, tell me some of those stories that you watched with Elisha. So Gehazi, who's been through all these miracles alongside of Elisha, starts telling the good news. He's like, well, there was this crazy time that this woman was losing her 2 sons. Now, I'm imagining this. I'm just telling you some of the stories, but he's recounting that one time when the 2 sons were going to get taken away by the husband's creditors because he died. And Elisha said, go fill the pots with oil. That happened. Another thing that happened for Elisha was Naaman came and he said leprosy all over his whole body. And Elisha said, go dip in the Jordan 7 times and you're going to be healed. And another time, can you just picture him in the king's presence just sharing the testimonies of Elisha, what the Lord had done? So then he starts recounting, and he recounts the story of the Shunammite. And he says, it was wild. This woman's son died, and Elisha goes and lays on his whole body. Warmth comes back. He sneezes 7 times. In that moment, in walks the Shunammite into the king's presence. That's so wild. The Lord is working on her behalf. While she is persevering, the Lord is doing a thing on her behalf. The testimony of Jesus is preceding her visit. The testimony of her life is preceding her ask to the king. What are the odds? Except that the Lord is working on her behalf. So, he's reporting to the king how he had restored to life the one who was dead. Behold, the woman whose son he had restored appealed to the king for her house and for her field. My lord the king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. Wow. And the king asked the woman, and she told everything to him. This is a key. She had been stewarding what the Lord had done in her life all those years. In her perseverance, am I stewarding what he's already done? I am having to remind myself often, like 5 times during worship often, what the Lord is doing and done. When it's not showing up yet, I have to say, oh, but remember when. Remember what you did for that friend and for me and that many years ago. Remember what you did. It is his character. It is who he is. It is his nature that I'm looking to. Our hope is not in an outcome. Our hope is not in the circumstances. The moment I put my hope in the circumstances, it's an invitation for me to be let down and disappointed. My hope is in a person. And when I put my hope in the person of Jesus, when I put my hope in the character of Jesus, That's when I can't be disappointed, but because his character remains. When I put my hope in that circumstance is turning out the way I think it should, there's just an invitation to be disappointed. Because he didn't say the way I think it should be turning out. He just said he's good. He just said he's the healer. He just said he's the restorer of all. He didn't say how he's going to restore it. He didn't say when I'm going to get my healing. He didn't say what the outcome and circumstances are going to look like. But he did say he's good. And I do know his character, and I do know his nature. And I look backwards at those testimonies to look forwards. I look backwards at the person of Jesus for his character to look forward to my future with a hope that does not disappoint. I found myself a week or two ago playing out a circumstance with Brent's business and thinking, okay, this is the outcome I'm putting my hope in. And it fell flat. I can't put my hope in the outcome, but I put my hope in the face of God. I look into his eyes, and I know his character because he's proved his character over and over and over and over and over again, and it's good, and he's faithful, and he's true, and he's near, and he's there. And then the circumstance that falls flat isn't him falling flat. My hope actually gets to be built up. Like, oh, that's not the way he has in his mind to play this out. But it's still happening because he's the God of hope. And this woman, she tells the king everything. She wouldn't be able to do that if she hadn't treasured those things in her heart. I think she would have kind of just froze. But instead, she's like, oh, let me count the ways my God is good. Let me count the ways he's been so faithful to me. Do you know I didn't even have an ounce of hope? And this baby came to me a year later, like the prophet said. Did you know he died? And I wouldn't take no for an answer. I didn't take death for an answer. And he came back to life. I built a tenacity in me that said, no, God, that's not who you are. You're the God who heals. You're the God who raises my son from the dead. She tells the king everything. And it gets even more wild. The king appointed an officer for her and said, restore all that was hers and all the produce of the field from the day that she left the land until now. Whoa. He's not restoring. Okay, I think I would have been satisfied with my house coming back. I might have been satisfied. Oh, I got the house and the land. No. She got 7 years of produce that the land produced, given back to her. All means all. He restores all. She went from a lady without hope that was just giving a generous gift to the prophet, to a woman who became tenacious in her fight. She's fighting the good fight. He's forming something in her, to I'm going before the king, and I am asking for it all, and I'm recounting what the Lord has done over and over and over again, and everything gets restored. Wow. It's God's past faithfulness and his character that motivates our hope for the future. I found myself just saying it in my sleep. You restore it all. You restore it all. You restore it all. Let this be our cry. Let this be our prayer. We got to be tenacious like this woman. Tenacious in the fight. He's forging us in the fire. And if we lose sight of that, we're missing what he's doing in our lives. Okay, so if y'all stand with me. Yeah, we're going to pray. God, make us a body of people who believe what you say is true and who just depend and rely and recount on your nature and your goodness and your character. God, I pray for a body in our house that you restore everything that's been lost in this house. Everything that's been stolen from any individual from this house, we say, restore all. You are the God who restores. You are the God who brings it back. We depend and rest on you. You are the good Father. You're the Father who heals, the Father who restores, the Father who provides, the Father who's the person of hope. And I just thank you for this room of tenacious, believing believers who believe what you say is true. Make us those people, God. Let us be formed in the fire and forged in the fire. I just thank you for what you're forming in this body, and thank you for what you're forming in our lives. Just make us like you, God. Make us like you. We love you, we love you, we love you. Amen.
Thank you for listening to the Sermon of the Week. To stay connected with Bethel Atlanta, visit www.bethelatlanta.com.